Hey everybody. We are going to be talking about kind of just recapping the day because today was kind of a crazy day. And I think it's important that I kind of go over kind of my thoughts on the trading day. One, because I piled in a bunch of contracts today, and I want to show people exactly where I piled in a bunch of contracts. So today specifically, I piled in a bunch of contracts on this pivot level. And there were a lot of different things that were happening that were the reasons why I was able to confidently pile in. But the main reason why is simply just because we were coming to a very, in my opinion, a very strong pivot. We blew through all these pivots. This is the S3 pivot, right? And so a lot of times, like when we have these downward days, that the S3 pivot, starts to act as a pretty strong support, right? Wasn't fully confident, but we started to get some bullish momentum, right? And if we go to the lower time frames, you can see what that looks like. But the more even I think probably the better entry was after that we've made this uptrend here, we had a pullback into this fair value gap, almost 50% in. And that also would have been an amazing entry, right? And how I'm doing this is I'm just using the smart money concept. So if we go to the smart money concepts, right? This is one of them I have as the fair value gap. So I just have the fair value gaps value set to 10. I use that on a 15-minute chart. And then I also have the smart money concepts without the fair value gaps also right here as well. And pretty much I'm using the standard, um, I'm not changing any of the settings really all that much. Um, but the important thing is that I keep them separate here just so I can toggle them off and on and off if I need to. It's looking a little cluttery. The other thing is, like, I mean, again, just the pivot points, man. Look at how overnight we were respecting this lower pivot. We came back up, really, came off of this pivot. Or we hit VWAP, we bounced off VWAP, right? And then if we zoom in here, it's very um, tiny fair value gap left, but there was a fair value gap on this candle, right? From here to here, right? We came off of the VWAP, absorbed that fair value gap, right? And then continue to the downside. If we go down to the 2 minute, you can see that happen, right? A little bit better, right? So this is us coming down to that VWAP, right? And then coming back up and absorbing that fair value gap, right? The fair value gap on the 2 minutes, doesn't show as nicely, but 15-minute fair value gaps are important, I think. And so, you know, getting this move to the downside was a great trade. And then all day today, if you missed all those entries, right, being able to go down to the lower time frames, right? So this is a Renko chart, box size 4, right? I want to show people this because I've been using this idea of the Q grid with some of the settings turned off. So I turned off of some of the I'll show you guys exactly what I'm turning off. I turn off the the bulls and the bear signals, right? I turn off all those, like telling me when to add and stuff, right? And I used my Q Pro settings, and my Q Pro settings, really what I'm paying attention to it here is going to be the Q wave, right? And if I go into the inputs of this, I'll show you my Q wave settings right there. 33, 256, and 5.5. This is like Q wave settings that I like to use when I'm on box size Renko 4. So the idea here is that I'm going to be using the grid, right, to tell me, hey, I'm only allowed to take shorts as we come down this way. And this is because this dark blue line is now dark blue, right? And when it's bullish, it looks teal like that. And so now every single time we come up to the mid band, I'm looking for a potential short, right? So potential short, potential short. If we come back up over to this blue band, I'm definitely taking a short because that could be a really good entry, right? Potential short, potential shorts, potential shorts. So just shorting the midline all the way down, you could do this all the way down, right? Now the points where I'd be hesitant of shorting the midline, right, is after we have a bounce, right? This is again why I think it's important to look at multiple charts, right? So it's like if we're coming down right here, this bounce right here, I want to be aware that that bounce was a pivot, right? And that if we come back up and I'm shorting, I'm not going to try to short probably the midline, right? Because there's a good chance that we'll probably push a little bit higher, right? But if we don't break that Q grid, right, and you can see this is that push right there where we pushed through the midline, but we didn't quite go through the Q grid, right? That's also a great potential entry for a short. And then you can see that we eventually push through. Same thing here where we start consolidating, right? And we're touching the midline a lot in this consolidation zone, right? And eventually we do get a push back up to the bottom of this pivot. This is like the retest of that pivot before that tank. And so that again would be a nice entry for a short. Now keep in mind that this is kind of just an idea right now, and the Q grid has not been around for this long, right? But I really like the idea of only scalping in the direction of the Q grid, right? Using that as my confluence, right? And so eventually, once we flip on the day, right, and the Q grid actually flips right here, now I'm just looking for longs, right? So the idea would be like now I'm scalping, the Q grid, right? I'm looking for longs off the mid band here, potentially, once we come back down to the Q grid line, right? And I'm looking to potentially take longs here, right? And this is a really, really nice pullback as well. If I look on the 15-minute fair value gap, we pulled back into this nice fair value gap on that little push 50%. So if I switch over to that, you can see what that looks like, that 50% pull into that fair value gap, right? And then we get a nice push out of that, right? So this is why I use multiple charts. You don't have to. If you're just scalping on the Q grid and the midline, you could be very profitable, I think. We're looking to take longs, Once we start to really push up, there's a nice midline bounce, only taking longs. Again, the idea is like once you're inside of this zone and you're only looking to take longs, right? The idea is that you're looking for small trades, right? And you want to keep your stops relatively tight, right? If you're looking to scalp this midline and it pulls all the way back down to the Q band, the Q grid line, right? Then you probably don't want to be in that trade, especially now with Apex's new, rule of like you can't stagger into trades as much, right? You can't DCA more than once, right? It's kind of probably been more beneficial to have a tighter stop, and so that's what I'm getting used to it because I am that trader that we come to the midline, okay, it's continuing going down. I'm looking at moving averages. I might want to add one on the 21, and then I might want to add one on the 50, right? And then I can't do that anymore. So I'm tightening up my stops a little bit to try to scalp for those smaller amounts. But all day long today, you could have basically done midline bounces and you only traded in the direction of the Q grid. I think it's just a good habit to get into because this is kind of like, again, that thing that I tell people to do is scalp with the trend. This is one of the tools that you're going to be able to use to help you identify what the trend currently is, right? All morning, you would have only been allowed to take shorts. And until that trend officially changed, right? And at 1, right? Which is actually pretty early, right? It caught that trend change pretty early. The fact that it switches over at 105, if we look on the 2-minute, this is 105 right here in this zone, right? And that is before we start to get the push and the retest, right? So we get the push out and we get the retest, and we're buying longs here, right? And that's a great, I think that's a great strategy. I mean, the fact that it does such a good job switching from sells to buys at the right time. And again, it's like not initiating all my trades off of it, right? Not initiating, it's not initiating the trade for my my style, right? It's not the trade initiator, but it is what is determining the trade bias, right? So what direction I'm taking those trades. Man, I can't stress that I like it. I like it a lot. So yeah, just one of these videos where I wanted to show people kind of my trade breakdown, a trading concept that I've been playing with, right? And kind of give people a little bit more insight on how I trade. And if you haven't already, there are some videos over on my channel as well where I go a little bit more in depth on like kind of breaking down my trading day, right? How I'm using the QuantVue system, the QuantVue tools. And I might even maybe repost one of those videos over here on this channel. Again, let me know down in the comments below what you want to know going forward, what you like, what you don't like, and and if you have any questions on like how to use our indicators. That's it for this video. Make sure you guys like, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.